Hey, Game of Thrones fans. I want to just talk a little bit about uh, season 8, episode 5. So if you haven't watched that, just shut this off because I'll have some spoilers. I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of the nature of power and authoritarianism. A lot of people thought it was unbelievable that, and again, spoilers coming up. Last chance, shut it off if you haven't seen it. If you're not totally caught up, shut it off. Uh, with a lot of people thought it was unrealistic that Dany would become the Mad Queen. Basically, they said, "Well, this is she's freed the slaves. She's been caring about civil rights. She's fought evil. Why would she just suddenly turn bad? Why would the writers do this last minute?" The writers definitely didn't do it last minute. They planned this show very, very carefully. So right or wrong, this is a planned plot point, and I think you can see that if you go back a little bit. And part of this is my own bias. I don't know the politics of the show creators, but I have a big political belief that authoritarianism and strong leaders isn't necessarily a good thing because of exactly this. In the real world, you end up with you don't really want people to have the power like a dragon, which would be the equivalent of like a destroyer ship. There was here in New York a destroyer in the 1850s, I think it was 60s. They actually shelled downtown New York. They were ordered to because of riots. You don't really want to have people with that kind of power because you could always end up with a bad apple. You end up with a Dany, or whoever gave the order to bomb New York. In 19, I think it was 1980, in Philadelphia, the I think it was the state police or the city police bombed an entire city block. Look it up online. It's called the Move compound. They blew up a whole city block. You don't really want to have the power. You don't want to give the local police bombs. You don't want to have, um, you don't want to have people have that much power. And if somebody must have a dragon or the modern day real life equivalents of something a very, very, very destructive weapon like that, you're going to have a lot of checks and balances in place. And you don't necessarily want to have authorities who, you know, have that great power because they may just have a bad day. And that can easily spiral out of control, which is kind of what we've seen. And that's happened many times in real life. A lot of times, as far as it being realistic, many tyrants in history uh, came to power by fighting some other tyrant, or worse or not as bad tyrant. So it's very realistic. That's how it's easy to come to power. If everybody's happy, it's hard for somebody like Daenerys to become powerful. But if people are slaves or something and you free them, that's a pretty easy way to become to power. Doesn't mean you're good. Fighting a bad guy does not mean you're good. Happens all the time. Che Guevara fought bad guys, and he was also a bad guy, and that's a common thing in history. Hitler fought a lot of bad things and was a worse bad guy than what he was even fighting. But he wouldn't have been able to rise to power if he wasn't fighting some legitimate. There was some really legitimately bad things that had been done to Germany, so he was able to whip up that anger. And so the main thing is you don't really want to have all throughout history, the bad things that have happened because somebody in power has the ability to do it. The system that they use is government, which is basically what Daenerys is. So from a real life standpoint on governance, there was a lot of signs that she wasn't good. Nailing people to crosses because they broke a law that you changed. In history, when you abolish slavery, you let the slaves free and you change the law, and that's it. You don't punish people, for the, I know it's horrible, and I I'm a freedom person, so to me slavery is the, among the very, very, very worst of crimes. But if you had some weird hypothetical where there was some, you know, place, some island off the coast of Georgia that was immune from the law and they never knew or whatever, uh, you wouldn't in the United States you wouldn't execute those people. Under current laws, you would life imprisonment most likely, and that would be probably a just punishment. And I consider that an extraordinarily severe punishment. So that shows how I mean, there's not many things that would warrant it, but slavery, is one of the very greatest uh, crimes. But even still, you wouldn't execute the people like that. And also, people refusing to bend the knee to you. That just the concept of wanting people to bend the knee shows bad qualities. Why do you want people to bend the knee? Who are you to have somebody bend the knee? Uh, it's it's not um, it's not a good trait. And you see what happened. In season 5, I think it was 4. She burned those guys, the Tarleys. Sam's brother, who was a nice guy, his father was a bit of a jerk, uh, not jerk enough to deserve to die, but she burned them alive just because they wouldn't kneel to her. That's a jerk move. It's a jerk to the point of evil. Think about somebody in the real world. Even when one of my very favorite scenes that I used to cheer for, and now I'm going to have to think of it differently, was when she freed uh, the Unsullied. Uh, I actually I bought a Conan print, an original from the old comic book, and the line in it is "Free the slaves." I had it as my Twitter handle, or picture at the top, because to me that's just freeing slaves. Like Django Unchained is one of my favorite movies. To me that is like the ultimate heroic deed somebody can do against fighting one of the great evils. So I loved that scene. But now, in retrospect, I mean, it's great fiction, and it is medieval times, so it is different. And we saw what happened when you tried to go gently with the slavers and Marine. You know. But in real life, if that really happened, if I found out there was slaves down in Connecticut, and I had, the equivalent of a super tank, like dragons, basically. Uh, Heck yeah. And I had the legal authority, the city of New York, Connecticut. They say, here, Bruce, there's 50 tanks. There's slaves up there. We hear you're a freedom activist. Go for it. You're deputized. I got a badge. Great. They say you can do anything you want. Would I kill those people? Oh, hell no. No way. No, no way. I would consider that evil. I would absolutely not. I would give the order to the troops to definitely free the slaves. That'd be great. It'd make a great YouTube. I'd love it. Um, Definitely capture the guys holding the slaves, but I would not say execute somebody. No way. No way. Um, so you want to think about it in real world terms. It shouldn't be surprising, and it is fiction, um, and the world in the historical equivalent was a much more violent place. You didn't want to have mercy with your enemies and a lot of everything. But if we're talking about modern things and you're subscribing like kind of our values, saying, "Hey, she freed the slaves. Why would she suddenly become bad?" That's the dangerous thinking, because authorities are bad, and people who think you should bend the knee, they exist now. They're authorities. I don't want to make this too political. I won't pick on particular people serving in government now. But whoever you're thinking, probably think the opposite, because it's a key to be open minded. Don't just think, oh, he's talking about the party I don't like. No, 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 no. I'm talking about power, because the power is bad. Even if it's somebody you love, you don't want to give them that power. Even if you love somebody, you don't want to give them a dragon, because the next one might be worse. Take your worst politician, whether it's Hillary or Trump. You wouldn't want to give them a dragon. You wouldn't want to give them, total huge power. You wouldn't want to give me the power to have the authority to go and take those tanks and drive into Connecticut without checks and balances. So you have people now where they say, you should be under my authority because I'm an authority. Respect my authority because I have a badge, or I have a costume, or I've been, appointed to this office, or it's almost religious in some ways. Looking at the state, because I have this special name or these special rituals or these people, but you must respect my authority. And it's very interesting and telling, where when Sansa says what's going to happen a couple episodes ago, what's going to happen to the North, you'll bend the knee, basically. Well, why? That's not ethical in any way. A really good person would say, no, mind your own business. What do I know about Winterfell? You seem to know Winterfell pretty well, considering you live here and you've been through a lot, and the people know you, and you know all the families, and you're kind of now in charge, and it's your family. I'm going to let you do your own thing. In real life, you'd have to be a real jerk. I mean, it'd be like me going to, Canada, and going to Toronto and say, hey, I know what's going on here. No, I don't. And that's the equivalent now. You have members of Congress who, from completely different states, different industries, they try and regulate things they don't have any clue over. And the danger is that when you're government, you only have one tool because you're convincing people didn't work. You didn't get people, hey, donate to my charity. And you didn't say, hey, here's my product. You basically say, listen to me or else. And there's always an or else with government. And it's the stick. And it's going to be the nightstick or the dragon or the phosphorus bombs. That's what government is. It is force and it is violence, not a suggestion. Otherwise, it would be called a charity. It's not a business, or it would be a business. It's force. It's the only thing that makes government a special thing. They're the only ones allowed to hit you and hurt you and put you in a cage. Anybody else, it's kidnapping. Government does it, it's called jail. Because it's a special, unique thing. And the thing that's unique about it, if you boil it all down, it's force and violence. You got to recognize that. Whether you love government or hate government, you must recognize that it is the violence, it's the nature of it. So when you have an organization, an entity, a type of thing where violence is the very nature of it, you don't want to give it a bunch of power. You don't want to have people with a bunch of power. So there's a lot of bad signs about Daenerys and about this whole thing that I think fit a lot with that. And I think it's something worth thinking about. So I guess that's all I have to say about that. Otherwise, pretty interesting episode. Watch out for authorities.